Welcome to Mountain Health Today. I'm Ted Owens, your host. Mountain Health Today is brought to you by the Tahoe Forest Health System, serving the greater North Lake Tahoe area. And my guest host today is Dr. Brian Evans, Chief Medical Officer at Tahoe Forest Health System. Brian, welcome. Good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Ted. Good to be here.
Well, thank you for making the time. Today, Brian, we're going to be talking about urgent care in just a few minutes. But I thought for the folks at home that might not understand some of the parlance that we use in healthcare, share with us, what does a chief medical officer do?
Oh, that's a good question. Sometimes I'm not even sure the answer to that myself. But most health systems and hospitals have a chief medical officer, and so that role is filled by a physician, typically somebody who's had clinical experience. In my case, I'm an emergency physician, so I worked in an ER for about 15 years before switching over to administrative roles. And so I have responsibility for the quality of the care that's provided throughout the entire healthcare system. So physicians, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, and just making sure that we are providing outstanding, high-quality, safe patient care.
Now, Dr. Evans, folks may not understand, you're on the administrative side of the world today, but you began as an ER doc. Tell us a little bit about that. Why did you choose? I know we're going to ask our guests the same question. Why did you choose emergency care?
Well, emergency medicine is a great specialty for a number of different reasons. But for me personally, I loved the variety of the cases that came into the emergency department. You really never know what you're in store for during a shift. You come in and patients arrive and you take care of them one at a time as to the best of your ability. And it's a real team approach to healthcare. You rely heavily on many other team members, certainly your nursing team and the techs, other physicians who are on call. And so I really liked that sort of teamwork and tremendous stories that come into the emergency department. And I found that I had an aptitude for it. And when I was considering other specialties, I thought about being a general surgeon, working in the operating room. But I found that being in an operating room for hours on end, standing, doing the same technical thing for long periods of time was not exactly my strong suit.
Now, I would imagine, for the folks at home, you're probably thinking the same thing I am, but there's a lot of adrenaline involved with emergency medicine, yes?
There can be, and it actually is one of the specialties that a lot of physicians suffer from burnout. Very common for physicians and other people who are involved in emergency medicine to find it very stressful over the years, and especially the night shifts, which eventually took a bit of a toll on me as well. But there's an adrenaline sort of a rush, I guess, when things are going on in the emergency department, when things get a little bit crazy. And some people really enjoy that. I always enjoyed it when it was a little bit more calm and things were a little bit more collected. And
probably when it was over.
Right, exactly.
Definitely. Yeah. So you practiced for many years, mostly in Nevada County, I understand?
Yeah.
And at some point, you had to make the decision, or you started to think about moving into the administrative side of healthcare. How did that evolve? How did that happen? When did you first start thinking about it, and why?
Well, as you know, Ted, there's a huge number of challenges in healthcare in the United States. There's lots of organizational problems that need to be solved. And I found that I enjoyed working on some of these very complex problems and using leadership skills in a different way to take care of larger numbers of patients and to take care of the hospital itself as opposed to one patient at a time. And so not everybody finds that as satisfying as I do, but I really do enjoy trying to make sure that people have access to healthcare. The healthcare is high quality and safe for all of them. And I still miss being in the emergency department. I really enjoyed many of the things I used to do, but I really relish my role now as CMO.
And also, I think the added benefit, of course, is that you understand what the docs are going through. So you have a perspective of great value, I would argue.
There's value knowing really what's at stake, and certainly knowing what it's like 3 a.m. when you've got a busy emergency department and patients are coming in, and some of them are dealing with very significant life-threatening emergency conditions, and knowing how vital it is to have a highly functioning system with the right resources in place so that we can always take fantastic care of those patients. And that's what we're doing at Tahoe Forest.
Well, Dr. Evans, we're going to bring in Dr. Lemack in the next segment in just a couple of minutes. And we're going to talk about urgent care. Urgent care is different than emergency care. How so?
You know, urgent care is a great option for patients who need care right away, but it's very important that people understand that it doesn't do everything that an emergency department can do. So it might be good for minor trauma, laceration, or colds, that sort of thing. But when people are very ill, having serious symptoms like chest pains or severe abdominal pains or vomiting extensively, things like that, or significant injuries, we really do want those individuals to come to the emergency department where we have 24/7 resources that are very high level, including advanced imaging and consultants available. But the urgent care is more convenient typically for more minor things, and so it provides a very important set of services that patients in our community can use.
What can you tell us about our guest who's going to join us in a few?
Dr. David Lemack is an outstanding urgent care physician and an emergency physician. He's done both in his career. He's brought a wealth of expertise to our community, and he's really doing a great job as a medical director of urgent care services for Tahoe Forest.
Well, we're going to be coming back and extending our conversation with Dr. Brian Evans, Chief Medical Officer of the Tahoe Forest Health System. We're going to have a guest, as Brian just shared with us. You've been watching Mountain Health Today. I'm Ted Owens, your host. We'll be back in just a few minutes. Thanks for tuning in. This is Mountain Health Today. I'm Ted Owens, your host, and I've been speaking with Dr. Brian Evans, the Chief Medical Officer of the Tahoe Forest Health System that's bringing you this program. Brian, good to have you here. Tell us a little bit about our guest that we're going to be speaking with in just a moment.
Thanks for having me be your co-host today, Ted. I appreciate it. Very excited to have our guest today, Dr. David Lemack. He's the medical director for urgent care services for the entire Tahoe Forest Healthcare District. So very excited to have his level of expertise. So Dr. Lemack, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I love talking about urgent care.
I love it. Yeah, I love it too. It's great. Well, let me kick things off real quick here. I know that you, in your background, you've been an emergency physician like me. You've also worked in urgent cares. You've done administrative roles as well. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted to join the Tahoe Forest team and what it is you're doing these days.
Well, the exciting part about joining Tahoe Forest, and it's been 1 year now that I've been here, is Tahoe Forest recognized that they needed to have a dedicated service line for urgent care to provide the best level of service for the community and for the patients in the area. What we recognize in urgent care is that we've become essential to the healthcare system. We've got primary care, we've got emergency care, but there has to be that bridge in between. And the world has figured out that we do something important.
Dr. Lemack, I'd like to ask you a question here. In healthcare, sometimes we throw around terminology or acronyms rather frequently. But for the folks that are watching, what are the differences or what are the bright lines between primary care, urgent care, and emergency care?
Perfect. I like that you gave the continuum there, because that is how we see it as well. We're part of that continuum. So primary care is the place where people can discuss the entire comprehensive nature of their healthcare needs. We're in the middle to put out the fire, but there are smaller fires. Whereas the emergency department, they're there to take care of the critically ill and injured. An example would be, I would like this illustration is, there's a stick figure falling off of one step. That equals urgent care. And then there's a illustration of a stick figure falling down a whole flight of stairs. That's emergency medicine. That's where the ER is important. The other way I like to describe it is, if what the person has, you put the word severe in front of it, then they probably need to go to the ER. But for the rest of the continuum of acute care, that's what we do best.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
That helps a lot, actually. And so, Dr. Lemack, what are some of the things you're seeing more commonly in the wintertime? We're a different sort of community here in the North Lake Tahoe area. a lot of recreational activities. What do you and your other urgent care team members see quite a bit of?
Quite a few more injuries. Now, every urgent care sees respiratory illnesses pretty regularly. Influenza, COVID, RSV, all of those germs that you hear about. But we also see a significant more intensity and number of injuries simply because we live in a ski resort area. So all of the winter sports, the injuries that are not severe enough to need to go to the emergency department, we see. And in particular, we also have a clinic at the base of Palisades Tahoe to see people as they come right off of the mountain.
Dr. Lemack, since you mentioned that, where are the urgent care clinics located in addition to Palisades at Tahoe?
Well, the flagship of the fleet, as it were, is right across the street from the hospital, across down a road in Truckee, in the multi-specialty clinic building. Mm-hmm. The other facility that is rapidly expanding in the number of patients seen is over in Tahoe City, and that's on Lakeshore Boulevard there, right across from the Safeway, so a nice visible spot. And as I mentioned, the Olympic Valley Clinic is at the base of Palisades Tahoe.
You know, one thing about urgent care that people think about quite a bit is that, you know, they're not making appointments. It's an unexpected visit, just like the emergency department. But people worry that they're going to have to wait a long time to get in, that sort of thing. What sorts of wait times are you seeing? How variable is it? Is there anything patients can do to try to, get in more quickly or navigate that?
Excellent questions, Brian. So back to the advantage of having a dedicated service line with providers and staff that are dedicated to doing urgent care. We've been able to, in the last year, basically more than half our waiting time. So our waiting times were well over 2 hours at the beginning. We're now hovering around 60 minutes, which is national average. The other thing that we've just introduced is a process called On My Way. Mm-hmm. And what this is a way of being able to kind of put a placeholder within the course of a day. The example that I think I used with Ted the other day was it's kind of like when you'd go to the butcher shop and you pull the number off, and that's your number. You're up next when they get to that number. So this process is you get to sign up for a particular time of day if it works out better, because you'll see the open times. Now, that's not the same thing as having a reservation, but it does mean that you have the first priority at that time frame.
You know, that it sounds a lot like what I do to get my haircut scheduled if I just want to go down to Great Clips or one of those. So we finally caught up to the hair salons. Is that what we're hearing?
And restaurants.
I think you got it right there.
That's great.
Okay. Dr. David Lemack, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us. Greatly appreciated.
Thanks again for having me, guys, and have fun.
This is Mountain Health Today. I'm Ted Owens, your host, and my guest, of course, today is Dr. Brian Evans, Chief Medical Officer of the Tahoe Forest Health System. And we've enjoyed a conversation with Dr. David Lemack talking about urgent care at the Tahoe Forest Health System. And we're going to take a break and bring Dr. Lemack back and continue our talk. We'll be back in just a moment. This is Mountain Health Today. Welcome back. I'm Ted Owens with Dr. Brian Evans of the Tahoe Forest Health System. And we've been having a good conversation with Dr. David Lemack, who is the director over management over the urgent care system in the North Lake Tahoe area, Tahoe Forest. But before we do, I think that, one of the questions, since I'm surrounded by emergency care physicians today, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in the industry nationally, and then we'll come back to access and scheduling and things of that nature. Since I have you both, we know that there is a national shortage of people going into the healthcare business, particularly on the physician side. as doctors involved in emergency care and urgent care and in administration, what are you seeing out there? What's the issue?
Yeah, I'll be very curious to hear Dr. Lemac's comments on this, but there is a shortage of physicians generally across the country, and it's very difficult actually to recruit physicians into rural communities like the ones we're in. So one of the biggest challenges has been primary care and folks that need to get into a primary care doctor timely. We're doing a lot to really help with that in Tahoe Forest. But urgent care, I think, fills a pretty important role there. So Dr. Lemac, I'm curious to hear what your comments are on where you fit in with the urgent care services you're providing. When is it appropriate for patients to come to you and your colleagues?
Well, that's kind of two questions there, but I'll go to the first one, which is one of the strategies that has worked well for urgent care in its the kind of development into a way of accessing the healthcare organizations locally is by integrating advanced practice practitioners. So nurse practitioners, physician assistants, they have a great home in urgent care with the ability to be relatively larger number of patients with complaints that may not be as complex. And so that helps with the convenience end of things for patients. On the other end of things, as far as what do patients come to us for, it really is defined by the individual, the community, what the capacity is by the healthcare organization. The fun part about urgent care is we're a bit of a chameleon. We can change our color to whatever that individual, the community, and the organization needs to fill their healthcare needs.
One of the things we have recently introduced at Tahoe Forest is the On My Way app, and I was hoping you'd be able to explain it. I think you could probably explain it better than I can, which is essentially a way for patients to sort of hold their place in line, as it were, or determine a time when they can arrive at the urgent care and also know how busy it may be. Is that roughly how it works?
Perfect. Exactly right, Brian. And we recognize that it's never convenient to need to go to the urgent care. And if there's a way of making it a bit more convenient, On My Way can assist with that. So the way it would work is someone would go onto the website or through the widget that's available, find out when an available time is through the day when we expect to be less busy. So the example or the analogy would be is like going to the butcher shop and pulling that number out so that you know you're up next. Well, what we're doing is reserving that person's first being the first priority at that particular time of the day, so that they're less likely to have to wait. Plus, it helps us with being able to expedite the patient getting through, so they're not having to wait for as long.
And Dr. Lemac, it's an app on a phone. Is that how it works? Explain how it functionally works for the patient.
Well, exactly that. It's available in the Tahoe Forest website. It's also available as an app. And what you can do is pick out the day, pick out the location of our 3 locations, and then available slots would sort of open up. So this is not the same thing as having like a reservation, but a similar concept in that if you sign up for a 1 o'clock, then at 1 o'clock you are the first priority being seen at that time.
Very good. I have a question for you both. Specific to urgent care, Tahoe Forest Health System exists in a rural environment, kind of unique because our population can explode on Christmas and Thanksgiving and in the summer. But how typical is urgent care in a rural environment?
I think it's becoming more essential in all environments, certainly including rural environments. But in rural areas, we have a harder time recruiting, and it can be difficult for patients to access care. We have some unique problems in the North Lake Tahoe area because, like you just mentioned, our population can swell and contract very rapidly depending upon the time of year. And so we have to the extent possible, have some elasticity built into our supply so that we can take care of whatever shows up. Luckily, we've been doing this for a while, and so we do understand how to staff and how to resource things. I do think that the addition of urgent care services to the scale that we now have them with Dr. Lamac's supervision, I think that's really made a huge difference for that issue.
Dr. Lamac, would you like to add to that in the closing seconds we have?
We're prepared year-round. We recognize that the number of patients seen varies throughout the course of the week and throughout the year. We have shoulder seasons, we have busy seasons, and we're prepared no matter what.
Well, Dr. David Lamac, Tahoe Forest Health System Urgent Care, thank you so much for joining us today. Wonderful conversation. For the folks at home, this is Mountain Health Today. We've been talking with Dr. Lamac and my guest host, Dr. Brian Evans of the Tahoe Forest Health System. For more information on urgent care, please go to tfhd.com. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching.